This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Alongside Steven Simcox, who has a new roof, or new parts of a roof.
I do. I got my roof fixed, which is good.
Why he wasn't here last week. We should have some sort of like homeowner's secret like handshake that like, you know, it's like, okay, I know. Like there's when you own, and like I'm telling two renters here who may like make that choice at one point in their life.
I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah. Here's the deal. It's awesome to have your own place. It's awesome to have your own place, but it is an abject nightmare also at the same time.
We just had a lady come in.
Yeah, I
guess she thought it was like farmer's insurance or something.
All the time, dude.
Probably thought it was the leasing office. There's not a leasing office in the building, you know. So, yeah.
That's funny.
She
was more scared than we were. It's okay.
So, the funniest one was when we first opened, because we have these curtains that you guys can't see on camera, but we have these curtains that black out the lights, right? And so when we first opened, we only had like a couple cameras because the studio wasn't completely finished yet. Like there still was a couple things they had to do in here. So we had cameras just kind of sitting and pointing, and the police came in because we were new to the building and they needed they just needed security information, all these things. They came in and the look on his face of relief of this is not a porn studio was
not yet.
Yeah, he was just like, he walked in, like we pulled the curtain, like they knocked at the door, we pulled the curtain back, and he like walked in and he like looked and he's like, oh, thank God. Oh, man, I don't know what I was.
But kudos to him for like checking it out. You know, he was prepared even if it was.
Yeah, being a cop's a scary job for a lot of different reasons. But you know, like he like walked in, and I think because the first thing he saw, because we used to have a camera just sitting on a tripod just right over to my right here,
right.
And so it was just a camera pointing, and he's like, No, please, no. Because all you could see is probably the camera and then a bunch of nothing over here in the corner. Like none of this stuff that you see on the wall, like none of this was here. So like it was just like, oh man, this is just
this is just a couple guys podcasting. Thank God.
This guy, this building must not have been renting many apartments. He's getting desperate. He's wherever you want. Steven, off the top, you just asked us, are we going to the Super Bowl? And yes, the three of us in this room, me and Garrett and Emery and Smokey, we are going to the Super Bowl. Now, when we worked together at the radio station, it was something that you never, ever once got to participate in. It was unfortunate.
Well, I participated in it. It was
but you never got to go.
I never got to go to Radio Row.
So here was the thing that we always felt when we were, particularly at the Super Bowl, but we went and we went to a lot of places. But we would feel palpable tension between those of us in a different place and the people at the radio station. And it was, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you try to make everything easier on everybody.
It was just a job.
But it like, you know, when you like get on the air, I've now realized this too. I'm thinking about like last year, my wife is home alone for a whole week and I'm like, oh, you'll never believe who I'd met today. And like, you know what I did today? There was a bug in the house and I couldn't get it out. I'm like, oh, yeah, no. I met Nate Burleson.
Yeah, Radio Row, and I mean, obviously, they do great coverage. Listen to it all. Watch it all. It's the best. But for producers, when I was there, it was one of my least favorite weeks of the year, to the point that when I got married, I went on my honeymoon during Radio Row week, and that wasn't intentional, but when my wife told me that was when we were going to get married, and I looked at the dates and I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's okay. that'll be quite all right. If that's the week I miss, it's fine, because Paul and Smokey and everybody there, and everybody hustles to try to get interviews. There's like 1 million people walking through, and it's like an all-day thing, so they would get there early in the morning, and it's like, hey, Mike Golick Jr. is here, like we're just going to sit down with them and talk with them. And so you'd record stuff and then there'd be a bunch of stuff live. And so it's just a lot of moving parts and everything was always, you know, fluid and kind of going crazy, which makes for great content, but it just always made for, you know.
Oh, it's crazy week.
Yeah, it's crazy week.
Look, you didn't have it as bad as Jason Behringer, the first producer when Smokey came aboard when we went to the Super Bowl in Dallas. That was the first Super Bowl I went to with him. And so
The ice storm year?
Ice Storm year. So Ice Storm, we took Zach with us, who's the other producer. And so we've got we had Tony Loomer at the time. So we had Zach and Tony and Jason in the building who were new to produce sports stuff. Well, during that week, and it was months and months and months of a previous ownership and then the current ownership of me and Dustin and everybody at the radio station telling them, hey, our automation system is breaking. Like, it is like at its last like leg. Mm-hmm. And so the new owner pushed it off because we're moved to a new building. He was a cheap son of a bitch.
Can't believe this information.
Yeah. So like he kept pushing it off and then was waiting until, and like part A of it was, look, we're redoing all these studios and offices and like literally the studio that the back wasn't even done of that building. Mm-hmm. The little T part of it wasn't done. So the studios were all kind of spread throughout in the main office building. So what was, as the shooter office across the hall was our ESPN studio for a little while. And so we leave, there's an ice storm, meaning that we can't get back.
You're there.
So like Zach, we can't send Zach back to like, hey, go down there, help him fix it for a day and then come back. So Jason had to run. We had to run commercials and everything because the automation system completely bombed. And he had to run everything live. Like, we had to run everything live. And then overnight, they would just let the network go because we had to play commercials out of – it was back to the dark ages. And when we came back, that poor skinny fool was just like, oh, he talked like this. He's like, oh, I'm glad you guys had a good time. I'm going to go jump off a building. Thank glad you're back.
He lived some life in that way.
He did.
But yeah, I mean, it was always very much like, hey, we just talked to Deion Sanders. And I'm like, okay, well, I just ate some cold avocado egg rolls. So things are going a little bit different here.
It's a wild week. It's a wild week. Hey, Zach got mad at us one time. It was in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Ken Griffey Jr. was there. We couldn't get him on. We tried, and he loved Ken Griffey Jr. But it's very but we're like, oh my God, Zach, Ken Griffey Jr.'s here, and then we didn't hear from him for 2 hours. Just email me what you want me to put on the show. just do that.
Who's and this is not like starstruck, but I know for a long time, Dan Marino was the guy you wanted to get on, right? Because he was did you get him?
I still want to get him on. And the reason I want to get him on the show is he has no interest in doing, you see Dan Marino on all these commercials, all these things, and doing all that. That's a paycheck for Dan. He's in no way enthusiastic to do it. He berates people that work for him when we're walking around Radio Row. 1 year in New York, we get candles from Tyler Candle Company because they're always kind of sponsor the trip. And so I just brought his runner, this lady, a bag of candles. And she's like, well, I can't get them on the show. I'm like, no, these are, you feel like you could use a pick-me-up. I mean, so and I told his runner, I was like, look, I've been trying every year to get him. And he's like, well, maybe next year will be the year. I'm like, look, I want to. And only because I want him to sit there and fake his way through it, but he does not want to be there. I even thought about 1 year sending over, we had an intern with us named Alex, who went with us to Houston. You remember Alex?
Yeah, I think Alex almost got lost.
Well, Alex almost got lost. He didn't know he's a bumpkin from Wisconsin. He didn't know what Uber was. So he just got in a car, and the guy's like, yeah, come on. So
Alex almost became a true crime podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. His sister is a very good friend of mine, and she would have murdered me. She just killed me. So Alex was there, and I was like, here's what we're going to do. If they say no, I want you to go up to him and be like, are you Dan Marino, the Dan Marino? And be like, do you remember Cindy Hansen? Baltimore, 1992. Do you remember that? And then just see.
We can get a DNA swab right now, Dan.
And then just watch Dan be like,
I'll make a scene in this place, Dad.
Yeah. And just see him listen, the only thing I want is for you to go over here. You won't hear anything from me. I just want one picture with you.
I just really need you to do this interview.
Yeah.
With ESPN Central Texas.
Just do this interview with ESPN Central Texas, and then I'll never ask for anything again. I promise. Just, It just means the world to me.
That'd be great. That'd be a great request.
Yeah, it would be great. But he was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm like, look, what else do we have?
Why are you here, Alex?
What else do we have?
You've almost been kidnapped, and you can't get me Dan Marino. Yeah. What's the point of you being here?
You can't lie to Dan Marino about the fact that he might be your father. He doesn't know. It's happened to him twice already.
It's better than like a Make-A-Wish angle or something like that. You know, you're not pretending you're sick.
Yeah, no. That's also the same Super Bowl that we were. We got Roger Staubach on the show, and so he was coming over, and like I was over with the USAA people, and I was trying to get Roger over, and you know he's Roger Staubach, like people stop him. So there's two things that happened in this 10 minutes while Smokey is over here melting down, thinking we're not going to get him. But USAA, I said, well, you will go over and tell that guy Roger's coming no matter what. Like, we're his last interview. We have 20 minutes with him. It's fine.
Right.
Like, no matter what, he's already said so. Roger and I had already talked. Like, it's fine. Like, we're good. So he's over there waiting. He's like telling people like, hey, we can't do this interview. Roger Staubach's about to come over. Like, you know, get out of here. Go, go, go. Just as you know, Smokey's kind of freaking out and tense. And so,
no way.
Yeah. So I'm walking over, and we're about halfway to the table from where he was at the other set. And Dak Prescott, this is his rookie year, stops him. It's like, oh, hey, Roger, you know, we haven't gotten a chance to meet yet. And they have this conversation. And I'm talking to one of the guys from the Cowboys. I was like, do you know how much people would pay to just sit in and like listen to this conversation? Like, there's Cowboy, you could auction this off, and people would like, some ridiculous oil billionaire would be like, they're coming to my house. You know, we're having Wagyu steak, and they're going to have this conference. Get Aikman and Romo in this too, and Danny White, and we'll have a whole big deal. So you could auction that off, and like whatever charity that Charlotte Jones Anderson wants to donate it to, like they're good for a while. Like Make-A-Wish, the wishes are all granted. So like, anyhow, he gets done with that. Dak's like, oh hey, people like, hey, you got to go over here to Old Spice or wherever he was going, and so. We walk off, we take like 3 more steps, and Brooklyn Decker comes up with 2 Special Olympics athletes. And she's like, hey, can I get a picture with you guys and these Special Olympians? And so then Smokey is like, I can feel him staring daggers in the back of my head. So then I was like, hey, walk around so you can see what's going on here. I'm like, there's a hot girl and 2 Special Olympics athletes. What am I supposed to do here, man?
Who am I supposed to knock over? None of it looks good.
Yeah, all this is bad. So then Smokey sees it, and he has this look in his face. He's like, oh, okay. So I was like, relax. And so we finally get over there. We had this great interview. And like when we sat down, though, like Smokey was like sweating. He was sweating.
Bro, you got him.
We got him.
Was that who's the most famous person you've seen there? Is it Roger? I mean, Roger, I know was a big deal for you.
Seen or talked to?
Talked to.
Talked to, ooh. Roger, Tony Dorsett, like, no, Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is probably more famous than Roger Staubach. Dion, like Dion, yeah, we had Dion twice, so yeah. I mean, so.
And I remember Dion too, it was like, before the interview, it was very weird. Like, it was just kind of cold, didn't know what we were going to get, and then like, man, once we started rolling on air, Coach Prime came alive.
Oh, yeah.
He was great.
Yeah. But did you hear, because you could hear the small talk that we were trying to have with him. Yeah, I could hear the small
talk, and I was like, gosh.
Anyway, I was just like, Dion and I, like, we have 2 things in common. We're from the same city, and we both went to FSU. And I kind of made the joke of like, hey, you know, people say that we have a lot in common because I'm also from Northrop Myers, and I went to FSU. I said, but the similarities in there, and he was like, uh-huh.
Yeah, he didn't agree.
He was like, uh-huh, whatever.
He didn't like Paul's little setup there.
And then he's like, okay. You know, and then I even said like, hey, we have a mutual friend, Walter Grace. And he's like, oh yeah, Walter's a good guy. And that's all he said. I was like, all right.
But then the cameras started rolling.
Then all of a sudden it was like you could hear the music playing. You know, Steven's like, we're back in 45 seconds. Yep. And then like Dion's like, we're here with Deion Sanders. He's like, what's up, Central Texas? I've been there a bunch of times. I've been fishing down there. Yep. And you're like, where the hell was this 5 minutes ago?
I mean, you see why the guy gets 5 stars, because he turned it on.
Yeah, he absolutely turned it on. And we almost didn't get him. And then like we're told like, no, look, we've built this whole, we had to tell the runner, we built the whole day of telling people we can't do this because Deion Sanders is coming here. So now the most famous people I've seen there, because they used to bring the halftime show onto Radio Row. Now the big networks, the ones that they'll do, are not really on Radio Row,
Right.
so they're outside. But the Black Eyed Peas, Madonna, which Madonna walked right like in front of us, and like everybody's kind of freaking out. And let me tell you, this was like 12 years ago. So you can imagine now, but up close, Madonna is scary looking. Like,
Okay, that went a different direction than I thought it was going to. Okay.
Dick Tracy Madonna is dead, gone. Like that Madonna, like a Virgin Madonna, gone long time ago, and it is a plastic surgery nightmare where she walked by and I, like Smokey tapped me, and I was like, ooh. Paid a lot for those doctors. Other than Madonna, you got ripped off. You got ripped off. Whatever they told you, it was a lie.
I hope insurance helps with that.
Yeah, I'm glad you got ripped off. So, yeah, that was the one. And then we saw Beyonce in New Orleans, which I'll give you a guess of which one of us was the most excited for that. It would have been Q, who almost got tackled by her security, I think.
That's worth it.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that too is we're talking about all these people, and of course everybody's like, "Yeah, those are super famous people." The most engaged I ever heard Craig smoke, maybe in his career when I was working with him, they were like these two wrestlers that wrestled like on the Japanese circuit.
Yeah.
And Craig like knew these guys. Like they sat down, and you could tell they were kind of like beaten down because nobody knew who they were. Yeah. Craig knew who these people were. Like, I don't remember their names, but Craig could tell you probably their mom's names.
Yeah.
Like he knew all about them, and it was great. It was just like, oh wow.
Anytime we get wrestlers or UFC fighters on Radio Row,
great.
Craig's there. He's
Craig's
great. As a matter of fact, like if we get any this year, we'll just probably get them over. Like, hey, come here to the studio and get a headset so you can talk to these guys, because he'll be better than us, and the interview is great. But like we had in Minneapolis, we had. Who was it? Two different wrestlers that sat down, and we just put them on with Craig, and then they got up and like, oh, thank God somebody didn't ask me to do the signature move or like this question. Like there was really good questions. Like, yeah, I mean he's very knowledgeable. He's knowledgeable. He knows the good, the bad, and the ugly about everything. He knows how to ask those questions. Yeah, it's like I've told Craig for years. Like there are a million wrestling podcasts out there. He could dominate.
Oh, he would be so much better.
Them. All of them.
If he did an MMA wrestling podcast, he would kill it.
He would dominate all of them. I mean, like, Garrett, you agree?
Oh, definitely.
It would be unbelievable. Like, I hope one day he does it, because then, the sponsors will come, because people will, I think, we have a good friend, Stu Myrick. Stu does one that's really good, too. I think he and Stu doing a wrestling podcast together would be, there would be no other wrestling podcast. People would, unless it was, retired wrestlers. Like, it would be them as far outside of that. But, yeah, it would be unbelievable. So, Steven, to the topic of the day, well, we've had lots of stuff, but this is all fun stuff.
Great.
I enjoy it. I enjoy hearing it from your perspective, because I can tell you who really hated that we went to the Super Bowl was anybody who was not in programming. They just hated it all.
I got that vibe.
You get texts and calls. You're like, hey, they would can you do this? We're like, do you know what I'm doing right now? No, I can't do your little mundane task. I'll be back on Monday. We can do it then. I'm in the middle of 30 interviews in a row from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. I'm here doing interviews.
Can't check affidavits. Right?
I can't do that. You guys will just have to wait. The Westwood One guy is right here. I'll say, hey, can I do the affidavits on Monday? He's going to say yes. I promise you. He's right there. I'll walk over to him. Seen him every day.
We'll get permission. Yeah,
it's fine. So anyway, but the NCAA on their way to getting sued once more, and it's come down in the last couple weeks. Florida State had a settlement with them over an NIL situation that they've agreed to the punishment. Florida's being investigated. Tennessee, who was already off a ton of level 1 violations, now also getting investigated for NIL. And the University of Tennessee has bitten back hard in that they're saying, no, this is not fair. It's not right. You have all these arbitrary rules that you keep changing,
right.
And some of this stuff is retroactive. Not to mention that the NIL collective, Spire Sports, is represented by the one and only Tom Mars. And Tom Mars is the lawyer who is beaten the NCAA into submission when it comes to NIL, athlete eligibility, transfers, and all that. He is, I mean, it's like Mike Tyson versus Glass Joe. I mean, it's just, it's really bad.
It's a beatdown.
Yeah, it's a beatdown. So here we are. We have the NCAA now being sued by the states of Tennessee and Virginia in an antitrust lawsuit saying that their rules prevent athletes from, making the most amount of money that they can. And that's true in and of itself. Like, basically, I mean, there's got to be rules for NIL, but basically what the lawsuits are saying is, like, make a rule that's going to stick. Mm-hmm. Like, why do you not get out in front and go, well, this is going to get us sued. Eventually we're going to lose this somewhere, or we're going to wind up in court spending money again. So all the stuff they've done, like, look, the punishment that Florida State agreed to might get undone because they didn't, like, really think about, like, all right, what's going to happen in the long run of this? And, Tennessee is a state that has a lot of colleges in it, but the University of Tennessee is the one. I mean, that's the one that everybody cares about. And here they are at the center of this. And Steven, I don't know when it's going to stop for them. Like, when are they going to say, like, all right, let's make some new rules that make sense?
It's a great question, but I also wonder, like, are the schools going to agree to it? Because I think the big issue is, I totally get why Tennessee's doing this. The playbook has been set. Like, if you get busted by the NCAA, what you're supposed to do now is not comply. You're just supposed to lawyer up, because it's been proven time and time again, the NCAA doesn't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to court processes, legal issues, those types of things. So these schools repeatedly win, or they end up, resolving it in some way that's beneficial for the universities. So it just feels like the clock is dwindling down, at least maybe in football, on the NCAA in general. I just don't know, Paul, at what point do we get some unified rules? Because I think everybody agrees it's the Wild West out there, right? Like, there's too much vagueness. There's too much gray area. Everybody can kind of do what they want. There's freedom of movement to a point that it's kind of frustrating fans. And, like, I don't even know who's on the team year to year. Like, I'm always worried about, can we keep people? Like, is it possible? If this player does a good job, are they just going to bounce to the next opportunity? But are schools going to listen? I mean, obviously they're not going to listen to the NCAA. Are they going to listen to, if they go to some sort of autonomous, situation where maybe there's a commissioner? I don't know what the answer is in getting regulation, because it feels like these schools don't really want, they complain about the lack of regulation, but they don't really want to abide by the arbitrary rules that are in place already. So I don't know what the balance there is.
Yeah, it's weird. So, like, the reason that pro sports works and is successful in America and the leagues that are is the owners all have one goal. Like, the 32 owners in the NFL all have one goal. That will never be true for each university.
Right.
Because each university is in a different place. It was founded by different people with a different mission statement. All of it seems the same, but, like, the differences are large enough to where, look, the Big 12 and Pac-12 could be a massive conference right now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, like, it could look a lot like it does right now with bigger teams in it, if they had just merged years ago.
Right.
Like, there was an opportunity, but they didn't do that, in part, not completely, but because Stanford and Cal felt strongly about being in a conference with religious schools. Like, well, and then also about being with, schools in Texas, a government, that they don't seem to agree with, and, where the Big 12 was riding this, so, like, listen, politics come, politics go. Like, this is all cyclical.
We just need to survive.
Yeah, this is about sports. It's not about, like, whatever issue we're mad about today.
Yeah.
Like, this is about that.
Research institutions, academic credentials.
Like, all that, like, this is about surviving in a different landscape. The other thing is that the presidents, most of them don't come out of the athletic world.
Right.
So Baylor's very lucky in that they have Linda Livingstone, who's a former college athlete, who's married to a former college athlete. So she came up through college with and around student athletes. And most of them are not going to be professional athletes. So she has a unique way of looking at it to where, say, the president, well, now he's been run out because of lying about research at Stanford, does not. So they're lucky to have that perspective. Or you're lucky to have a a president who's like, look, I know what, like,
I know where the money's made.
yeah. Look, if you're at Alabama, you'd be foolish to be like, listen, football, we're not going to, like, you can't just run things anymore. The only reason people know about you outside of Tuscaloosa is because of that.
Yeah.
Like, that's why. Like, that's the thing you want them to know about you historically. You don't want them to, like, don't Google back to about before 1980 about Alabama. Like, don't do that. don't watch Forrest Gump in the middle. All right? Like, those are things you don't want to know. Like, these are good things you want to know. So, like, sports, for the most part, are good things you want to know, but they're not equipped to handle it. So then what they usually do is they go, okay, let's go to Washington, D.C., because they'll be able to figure this out. Well, do you know who knows less about it than they do? Congress,
yeah.
So, like,
they have their own special interests because they're just trying to satisfy constituents. So.
I mean, how many times do you see these hearings where, like, you get up to the question, it's like the president at Michigan is like, well, I'd like you to know that I'm a proud Purdue grad, sir. And he's like, oh,
okay.
All right, what's your question? Well, do you think that call at the end of the game in 1987 was legit? Like, yeah, it was. Well, we're not going to have a good exchange there. Ha, 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 ha. Chamber laughter, chamber laughter, chamber laughter. I'm going to ask a really stupid question about something I don't know anything about. And then it's just how it goes. Like, that. Like, what are we doing? Like, so we take people who should know a lot about something. They don't. And then we pass it on to people who know even less. Like, it would be like me taking my car to a mechanic and saying, hey, I can't get you in today. And instead of going to another mechanic, I just drove down the street and picked a guy. Like, you.
Hey, man.
Oil change.
Transmissions? Yeah.
You. I mean, I give it a go. Not doing anything.
I got YouTube on my phone. We can figure this out.
I mean, I've heard things. Like, that's what they're doing. So this just continues to be this gigantic, ridiculous mess. And, in the middle of this, and what is not ever considered, is the fans. Like, we basically had to beg for a 14 playoff. Mm-hmm. Beg even more for a 12-team playoff. And then, the only thing that really got us the 12-team playoff was that COVID came, shut down sports for a while, and they're like, we got to make some money back. We've lost a bunch of money. So if not for a global pandemic, we probably wouldn't even have the 12-team playoff.
Well, and now we have a 12-team playoff, but we're also moving towards possibly two conferences making everything even more exclusive by going away and kind of huddling to themselves. Yeah. And then, outside the Power 5 or Power 4, whatever you want to call it, just I don't know what it's going to look like. But yes, I mean, it's always been an experience. I mean, the fans are so passionate about it. It's not like the NFL. Like, NFL fans are passionate, yes, but it's not like college football where these people live and die by it, and still you don't really have a clear path to, equal and fair way for everyone to get a title.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I don't know, like every day that passes, the NCAA doesn't prove its worth for survival.
Right.
Like, they just, it had been like, you remember when Chipotle got in trouble for having salmonella and E. coli and all their food?
I do remember that.
It had been like, listen, we got rid of the salmonella and E. coli. And that's good. We hate to tell you, it's gotten worse. Now, if you have a burrito bowl, you're going to get Ebola. So we've got
But not salmonella.
It's not salmonella, though.
That's what you asked us.
You asked us.
Specifically to do.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah. E. coli, gone. Ebola, though, running through the chicken. So, that's every time they're like, all right, well, you asked us to put up some guardrails for NIL. All right, great. All right, what now? Oh, antitrust lawsuit. All right. So basically the governments are going to have to make them reform. Mm-hmm. And the government really doesn't the other thing I've gotten from all of this is the government really doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They know, if you guys can't agree on this, there's no way we're going to get all of us to agree on it because we agree on nothing anymore. Mm-hmm. We agree on nothing. You have a government right now that's like, hey, this is a problem. And the other one's like, no, it's not.
Right. Yeah, our whole thing is just stalemates now.
Yeah. Oh, it used to be we would disagree on how to solve the problem we agreed existed. Okay, we should do this for it or this for it. And then that would be the fight. Now it's not a problem at all. That's not true. This is not a problem. They're like, oh, this is a huge problem. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And you can't even agree on what's wrong. Right. You're not going to fix anything. So, and the NCAA has that same problem. So I think really what the governments are doing is kind of daring the NCAA to fix itself before they have to really get into these lawsuits. Because if not, like, we're just going to continue down this path over and over and over and over again. And they're out like, they're telling them, like, you want us to fix it. We can't agree on a budget. Like, we keep pushing this down. Like, those are things that don't even concern you. We're talking about roads and military and like all these important things that you need, schools, like water, electricity, all these things we have to do. And you guys want us to like tell athletes
NIL,
they can't make money? We don't care.
Just figure it out.
Figure it out. Like, you guys are supposedly the smartest people in the world. Get in a room and smart it up. But they can't do it. They cannot do it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Good job, Paul.
But anyway, when we come back, Big 12 basketball. Steven's a TCU guy, locked on Horned Frogs, and this is a nice little hot streak that TCU has. 3 in a row, wins over Baylor and Texas Tech in that, and kind of the kings of Texas right now when it comes to basketball.
I like that, Paul.
Yeah, right now. I mean, like, again, that can change tomorrow.
It can change Saturday when we play Texas, but we'll see.
We'll see. Texas is their fans are going to, love them like crazy and then hate them. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Pam and Tommy Lee like all season long. It's just what it's going to be for them because that's their team. Just like, oh man, look at that. They're so in love. No.
Not anymore.
Nope. Somebody gave somebody a tattoo and gave them Hep B.
Hit a little rough patch.
Yeah, hit a little rough patch. All right, we are going to be back and we'll talk TCU basketball among other things next. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back. Steven Simcox alongside Locked On Horned Frogs. And Steven, TCU, we'll start with TCU in the Big 12 basketball right now. The conference is not going to get less confusing because it's going to be pretty much every night of this. Like, Baylor's on a 3-game skid right now. They've got to go get a win in Orlando tonight. Yeah. But like that's the one, like, at the beginning of the year, you thought, like, all right, well, if you're on a little rough patch after these 3 tough games that they've had, go down to Orlando and you can probably get right.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
It is amazing. And we can get to TCU obviously in a minute, but Garrett and Paul, like, I thought, Houston, they're going to be good.
Right,
they're a great program. But, I mean, BYU is like, I thought BYU early season, okay, maybe a little bit of a hot run. They'll hit the skids in conference play. No, it's still top 25 team. Like, UCF has shown the ability to beat anyone on any given night. Cincinnati's been solid. It's crazy how much the new teams that I thought were really going to struggle in basketball have immediately just hit the ground running and have made it a competitive conference night in and night out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ridiculous. So TCU, what has shot them up into this hot streak in your opinion?
So this team's built a little bit differently. For years, Jamie's had an identity both at Pitt and at TCU of he's always had really athletic guards that are long and rangy and play good defense, but he's rarely had great shooters. TCU had Desmond Bain a few years back who could really shoot the basketball. Mike Miles has been their leading scorer the last few seasons. But they're really deep this year. I mean, they've got 10 players that they legitimately play in the rotation. Trey Tennyson can shoot the basketball. They went and got Jameer Nelson Jr. from the transfer portal. And it wasn't meshing early. In non-conference play, they got beat by Clemson and Nevada. And I was like, those are the two teams you played with a pulse before Big 12 play, and they got beat pretty soundly. And my thought was, man, I mean, this seems like a team that doesn't play great defense, is going to be streaky offensively. But they figured it out. They don't really have one go-to scorer. It's been kind of night by night. Different guys have stepped up, but Micah Peavy's been good. Emmanuel Miller's been good, and the Shalimar Arena. It's not it's not Ames, Iowa. It's not the Foster Pavilion. It's not Allen Fieldhouse, but it's become a pretty good home field advantage for them, home court advantage for them. And they're just taking care of business. They found a way to scratch and claw and survive against Baylor. They beat Tech pretty soundly last night, and now you get Texas at home. But yeah, Paul, I mean, they've been a team that's hung around kind of the middle of the pack, but this looks like a group that has the ceiling to maybe finish in the top 4 or 5 of the league, and then possibly get to the second weekend of the tournament, which is something they've never really done. So I think expectations are getting higher by the day as they continue to put together these wins. But an impressive 3-game win streak, and it kind of makes the losses to Cincinnati and Iowa State, even though Iowa State's a good team, they were missing Lipsy in that game. They played TCU, though. It kind of makes those more frustrating, but as we said, it's a tough – you're not going to go 14-4 in this league. Like, it's just almost impossible to not have a couple down games or run into somebody that's hot. But they're playing really well at the moment and have an opportunity to go through the first half of this conference schedule 6-3, which would be a huge deal for Jamie Dixon's team. Yeah,
absolutely. So the TCU is a team that also makes me feel really old in that Chuck O'Bannon Jr. and Jameer Nelson Jr. are both on it.
Right.
And I remember their fathers' whole careers.
Yeah.
Like that's one I remember when I heard it first this year, like just on a highlight, like Jameer Nelson Jr. and I knew he was there, but it didn't it's one of those things where you don't think about it until it's like Jameer Nelson Jr. with a big 3, and I was like, oh man. And then I was like, oh, I'm watching Chuck O'Bannon Jr. with a rebound. I'm like, who else's kid do you have? Who else, Jamie, do you have that's going to make me feel ridiculously old?
And the funny thing is, Chuck's in his 7th year. I mean, he's one of those COVID eligibility guys that's been there forever. But yeah, Jameer Nelson Sr. and Delonte West, that was one of my favorite college basketball backcourts ever when they were at St. Joe's. That was a fun team. They got up and down the floor and scored. I'm curious about this with the Big 12. Because I know, Paul, Kansas has become kind of close to your heart, given your.
I mean, yes,
you're married to a Kansas fan.
Hey, I'm going. I don't know if you know this. I'm going this weekend. I'm leaving tomorrow. Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going before I go to Vegas. I'm going to be in Kansas City and Lawrence for Houston and Kansas.
I love it. All right. They've been a little shaky. Houston has seemed to right the ship. Is this just a lot of really good 2 and 3 seeds in the tournament, or do you feel like, is Houston the team that you think could go win a title? Who's the
Houston
group?
can go win it. Houston plays so good defensively, and they're all what I thought would derail them is all these teams they've had that have been really good under Kelvin Sampson. He never really had an offensive team that scared you, at all. And now they're in the Big 12 and they're doing that. They're playing both sides of it really well. When they lost to Baylor in 21, that was a team that shut everybody down on defense. But if they did get on the wrong side of a hot shooting night, like they did against Baylor in that game, or I guess the Elite Eight, in that game, well, what were you going to do, right? It was just that they did not have anybody that could match all right, this guy's going to fill it up, so am I. But I do think, Houston can do it. Kansas has the frontline starters to do it. They have not had since the title run last year and then now this year. I don't think they've had that Bill Self level depth. They're good. Yeah. They're good on the front line, but they don't have they can't just kind of come at you, off the bench. Baylor kind of does have that, but they don't really. They've got a chemistry problem right now. That's what I think it is. And I don't think it's a bad chemistry problem. I just don't think stylistically everybody matches on the floor. Texas has the same problem. Texas, if Texas got hot, if they could legitimately string it together, they have a lineup that can beat anybody in the country, but they just don't do that. To win, that's the thing about the Big 12. It's hard to pick who can be, your tournament winners, because to win a tournament, to get in the Final Four, you got to win 4 games. You got to win 3 games, right? So who's winning 3 games in a row all that often? To win the whole thing, you got to win 5 games in a row. Well, Houston's the only team doing that right now, right? So like Texas Tech looked like they could ferment, lost last night. Like, so who can go on legitimate streaks? And right now that's Houston. Like Houston's the one who's doing that. They're consistently the one who can just go on a tear and withstand all comers, as opposed to everybody else who's like, like I said, a lot of good 2 and 3, 4 seeds. And look, one of them might like break through. They're all good enough to.
Yeah,
you get the right kind of draw in the tournament. You can wind up in the Final Four out of the Big 12 because whoever you're playing will probably not be as good as who you've played all year.
Right.
So it might wind up being easy. I think, Baylor the last few years in particular got the worst possible draws they could have had. I mean, they got North Carolina in the round of 32 a couple years ago, and that was the hottest team in the country until the second half against Kansas, and kind of came out of nowhere, like almost didn't make the tournament and then almost won it.
Went on a run.
And then last year they played Creighton, and that was for that particular team who didn't defend the 3 very well, a bad matchup. And that's the tournament. Like, nothing to like, oh, this is coach doesn't know how to get it done. Like when you're in a 64 team tournament, like sometimes it's just like the luck of the draw of like, oh, the one team that we like, the only way that they win is the one thing we can't stop. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of how it was. I've seen, look, good Duke teams like run up against, the buzzsaw. Like FSU's best run under Hamilton ever was upended by Shaka Smart. When he was at VMI or VCU.
VCU, yeah.
When he was at VCU, running the press, like they just weren't ready for it. Hadn't seen a press team all year. Didn't know how to practice against it. The coaches did, but the players were like, I don't know, man. So like it's just how it is. Like, oh, everybody thinks this team could get to the Final Four. Well, no, they haven't played a press team all year, and look what happened. So I don't know.
And Houston's doing it right now. I think you're right. Like the individual scoring is better. And they're really doing it without LJ Cryer being a huge factor. I mean, he's been very consistent. If he gets to a place where he's shooting the basketball well, then that's an even more dangerous team. So that seems like the right pick at the moment. I do wonder. I mean, I don't know how Texas kind of evaluates Rodney Terry. There's still a lot of season left, and they are talented enough to get on a roll. I know he's a good recruiter. He's got talented players coming in, but they were up there at the top of the league. This has kind of been it's not. You can't say it's a disaster yet, but it's not going the right direction. So, I guess Paul, if he can't get things turned around, do you feel like they have some grace for him after one season, moving to a new conference next year, like with talent coming in?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I think that he's going to fall into that. Well, maybe you shouldn't have made the interim guy the coach. Like maybe you shouldn't have done that. It hurts him that Chris Beard's doing so well at Ole Miss.
Yes, it does.
Although Chris Beard's non-conference schedule allowed him to do that. They didn't really have a lot in their way, but yeah, it hurts him that way. And I don't think that there's probably some fans that, think that, hey, Chris Beard, we should just kept him and let him work it out. But also I think there's a lot of fans that know that like, look, you can't be the University of Texas and every time something bad happens somewhere else, be like, I got to fire everybody and investigate and make sure. And then like when it happens to you, you can be like, well, it's different with us. Like,
let's wait till the facts play out, right?
Yeah, let's wait till it plays out. Like, because, and look, I'm not even saying, like, all the things that Texas has pointed the finger at people didn't happen, but I do know that, like, they've made it worse for a lot of people, and they're the first ones that, like, stand up and, never at the University of Texas.
We would never do that, right?
That would never happen. We don't put up that stuff here. And then, look, mostly because they don't have to, right? Somebody messes up, like, you fire them and bring something, like, you're going to have a line of people like, oh, I'm not going to do that stupid thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll take that job. Give it to me,
Yeah.
So, yeah, they didn't have to, but, like, yeah, it's kind of blown up in their face a little bit. I don't think it's blown up in their face, but, like, it's, it's not worked out how they wanted to with Rodney Terry. And, like, he's trying to find himself as a head coach at Texas, too. That team had kind of a uniting mission after all that went down last year, and you have that shared experience. Well, then when a lot of those people go and you bring in new people, well, then they don't really have that shared experience anymore, right?
Well, that's the key. I mean, and I think Rodney's a good coach, but when people are like, well, the players want this guy. Well, I understand that. The players aren't going to be here in 3 years. Like,
they may not be here in 3 months.
They might not be here in 3 months, like you said. There's with the portal and with everything that goes down now. I mean, you could be looking at a whole new team, especially in basketball. You're basically drawing up a new starting 5 every year. So you have to think about more than just what the guys in the building at the moment want.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to, and I think But I don't know. I think that that getting rid of him might be a little too premature.
Sure.
But I don't think he's going to get that kind of grace. I think that they're, I think moving to a conference like the SEC, which is a good basketball conference, it's not quite as top to bottom as the Big 12 is. They have a chance to kind of maybe jump up pretty quickly to the top of that league.
They do, yeah.
I mean, so, Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida's still trying to reboot itself into what it used to be, but they could be right up in the mix in that. Them and Oklahoma going in, could be right up in the mix. Really.
You would think. I mean, there's going to be 4 or 5 games on that conference schedule that are, hey, we should win that pretty easily.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case in the Big 12.
Well, there's only one this year. It's Oklahoma State.
Right.
And even then, still got a really good coach on the other side.
Yeah, if you catch them in Stillwater on a bad day, then
you
could lose.
Yeah, no. Look, Scott Drew will tell you all the things about Mike Boynton and the coaches. The other thing about this in the Big 12, the coaches know each other so well. A third of the coaches are now Scott Drew people, so they all came off of the thing. So
same tree, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got, and they play each other. Jamie Dixon's been there a long time. Scott Drew's been there a long time. Otts hasn't been there that long at Iowa State, but he's been there long enough. Now he knows everybody. Bill Self has been there forever, so everybody knows everybody. Even if you haven't been at your individual school, Grant McCaslin and Jerome Tang and Rodney Terry have all been in the league for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So they just know each other so well. So it's really, really tough to get over on people and get on a streak. But what was I was gonna ask you a question. Oh, about Kansas State. We're talking about Kansas State. They're in a rough spot right now. I mean, they had the whole kerfuffle about Iowa State a couple of games ago. Then they had a really tough loss last night. They lost their best scorer. They got suspended and eventually removed from school. If you ask anybody but the president of the university, that was unnecessary. Kansas State fans feel like it wasn't handled right. I don't know if we'll ever really know because the details of all this have been very vague.
Right.
But
we still don't really know what happened.
We don't know what happened, what caused it, how many times did something like this happen with this kid. So they lost one of their best scorers on the team. They don't really have that guy right now. So they have to play a kind of certain style. And if you get behind, they're kind of like Houston used to be, where great defensively, but if they get behind the 8 ball, that's going to be it for them. I'm wondering what they need to do to kind of get back on the right track if you're not going to just have a scorer come out of nowhere.
That's a great question. I mean, you just got to try to make it a rock fight, but it's tough to win games in this league. I think they benefited early from a softer schedule. They did get a huge win against Baylor at home, which is a big deal. You just got to kind of defend your home court as much as you can because I know the Octagon's a tough place to play. But I wonder, too, I mean, when you're rolling like that, and it's not just that they lost to Iowa State, but the way all that went down and, the fans were going at Coach Tang, and that was all in good fun. He seemed to think something nefarious was happening there. But I don't have a great sense for what's going to reset that team. I mean, I think a couple wins would help, but as you said, I mean, it's just hard when you're missing your offense. Unless you're going to start shooting threes at a high clip and developing open looks that way, try to stay in games, or if you're just going to try to play a game in the 50s, that's just not sustainable night in and night out. I'm not really sure what the answer is for Tang other than we really got to sell out at home and play great defense and try to win as many games as we can in Manhattan because going on the road is going to be tough going when you don't have isolation scores who can go get you a bucket during a tough offensive stretch, Yeah,
absolutely. All right, we've got 10 minutes left here, Steven. So I want your opinion on the actual Super Bowl game.
All right.
So we're going to, we don't need to take the break. We'll just roll with it right here. Your opinion on how this shakes out. Because it is, we've seen this matchup before, but the 49ers are a lot different team than when they were in there the last time. A lot different. And the Chiefs are pretty much the same as they were, save for a couple things, except for a little bit less polished on the offensive end.
I think the Chiefs are honestly a defensive team now.
Yeah.
I think that's their identity.
Yeah.
I mean, they can still score, and I feel like Mahomes has done an outstanding job, especially with Kelsey in the playoffs. I mean, that first touchdown against the Ravens was ridiculous, where he threw it back shoulder, and Travis just caught it with somebody draped all over him. But, I mean, did they score in the second half of that Ravens game? Maybe they got a field goal. They didn't score at all. You know, aside from that pass to Scanlon, that was the dagger. They really didn't do much on offense at all. So it's weird. The roles are sort of inverted because that San Francisco team with Jimmy G, I mean, that was a group, Paul, that ran the ball. Like he only had like 8 pass attempts in the NFC Championship game. They just ran the ball at will against the Packers. They were all about controlling the clock, playing defense, getting things done in the run game. And I'm amazed, like, I mean, we saw Brock Purdy up close and personal, and he was a good quarterback. Like, he was not a dink and dunk type of guy at Iowa State, but I always thought Breece Hall was the leader of that offense. And I mean, he's making plays, Paul. They scored at will against the Lions in the second half of that game. They've got so many good skill guys, but I can't bet against the Chiefs right now. They're playing so well. I think that defense is going to be salty, and I just think they're going to score enough to get it done. I feel like they're so efficient right now when they need drives. And I mean, they kind of benefited, like they had the game against Miami in the extreme cold that was really helpful that it was in their environment. But then they beat the Bills on the road, which, I mean, the Bills might be the most talented team in the league, just top to bottom. They went into the Ravens' house and got it done. Like, they're just on a heater right now. So I like the Chiefs, and I'm curious what type of game it's going to be because I don't feel like it's going to be like a 17-10 slugfest, but both these teams are kind of built in similar ways, but KC's just got the better quarterback, obviously.
Yeah. I do think, like, sometimes about matchups, there's a kind of a big thing with Kansas City's not going to have Charles Omenihu and Derek Nandi. And I think that's going to affect, at least it's going to affect the scoring in this game because when you've got Christian McCaffrey, not having to run up against two of the starters on that defensive line, that's going to be something that the Niners will lean on. But again, like, it's just so hard to bet against Mahomes. You know, like he's at the point now where, you know, like when Tom Brady was in the Super Bowl, like, well, I'm going to pick Tom Brady. Like, and if you look at the 3 times that Brady lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants and to the Eagles, like crazy things had to happen. Like crazy things had to happen. So
Nick Foles played out of his mind.
Yeah, Nick Foles played out of his mind. David Tyree catch against the helmet. Mario Manningham gets lost in the shuffle of all this. But Mario Manningham made 2 huge catches in that game in Indianapolis. And people were like, Giants fans were like, God, I'm so over Mario Manningham. And then he made 2 of the biggest plays in the Super Bowl. They couldn't, like, on key third downs, they couldn't sack Eli Manning in 2 different games in the Super Bowl, and they lost those games. But it had to be crazy things had to happen. So, to me, if the 49ers are going to win this game and beat Mahomes, and look, the only person Mahomes has lost to is Brady, you know.
And so much of that, too, was just he lost to Brady. Also, the Bucs pass rush was just
all
elite
over
that day.
Well, like they had injuries on their offensive line, injuries on their offensive line that, like, you know, they had to shuffle this, and the Bucs pass rush got all over them, and that's what the 49ers are going to have to do. And that's why you go get Chase Young and pair him with his best buddy Joey Bosa, and even if it's only a rental, like, you get that, like, you go make that happen. And so, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But I do think something crazy is going to have to happen for the 49ers. Like, it's going to have to get weird at some point where, and that's how it is in many Super Bowls. There's some kind of miracle play, like, except in the blowout ones, you know. But, like, in most Super Bowls now, it comes down to the Philly special and, you know, all that. Like, even in the Philly special game, like, Tom Brady's got the ball with 1.5 minutes left to go maybe win the game, and Philly got to him. So, you know.
If San Francisco doesn't win, I don't really know what they do because, I mean, the thing with Shanahan for years has been, well, if he just goes and gets a big-time QB, that's kind of the last missing piece. But he's had effective offenses with sort of a revolving door there. Purdy seems clearly like he's the guy. I mean, he's the dude. But as you said, a lot of things have to fall into place for you. And then, man, I mean, if Casey's able to get it done, like, it's just insane to me. I was there. I was watching football at that time. You covered this team, Paul. How did Texas Tech not win games with this team? I don't understand.
I said it on Monday. Like, every time that Patrick Mahomes winds up in a Super Bowl, it makes Cliff Kingsbury look like a less attractive head coaching candidate to me.
It does. He's maybe, aside from Brady, who beat him and has the rings on him, like he's maybe the best of all time. I think he's like second or third, you know? He's going, if he wins this, it'll be Super Bowl number 3.
Yeah.
He's been to an AFC title game every single year. Even the years that he's an underdog, they find a way to win. They got to one bowl game, man.
A Texas Bowl. Not even one, like the Texas Bowl is a consolation prize for your season. And no offense to the Texas Bowl. They treated me well all the times I've been there.
But no, it's not the Sugar Bowl.
It's not the Sugar Bowl. Like they did not have one single great season with Patrick Mahomes as the starter for 3 years.
His most iconic moment was when he put up like 1,000,000 yards in a loss against Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Like the game we all talk about the most is the one that he lost to Oklahoma because they just couldn't stop. I mean, the defense couldn't stop the opposing team. Yeah,
Cliff Kingsbury could not get a defense that was reasonable enough to give up 36 points a game.
Exactly.
Like that's how bad that was. Like because they were going to score 40 with Mahomes most days, but he couldn't have somebody that gave up 35. Like just couldn't do it. They could not get the talent in there. They weren't running a system, and it just escaped him. And the fact that, look, Mahomes going to the NFL and being good so soon is what, really probably killed Kingsbury in his own alma mater. Was like, dude, we love you nearly unconditionally, but what are we doing?
It's what got him fired from Tech. It's weirdly also probably what got him the Cardinals job, but then he washed out quickly there because they were like, well, I guess we know why he didn't win at Tech now.
Yeah. I mean, and he even had they thought okay, well, if we just put a defensive mind here with him, then that'll work. And it looked like it was, but then he couldn't keep Kyler Murray healthy. And then you also had for him, Kyler, you got to tell Kyler Murray, hey, look, buddy, we know you love Fortnite, but everybody here loves it. We all will have a good big Fortnite day, but
maybe let's watch a little film.
Yeah. You know what Tom Brady doesn't do? Play Fortnite 6 hours a day. So I'm not saying you have to be exactly like him, but that's a good habit to have when you're trying to, do what he does.
Lead a franchise.
Yeah, lead a franchise. So I think Kyler's probably grown up a little bit since then, but those are the things that all happen. But even still, do you, I think people would, every interview he would go on as a head coach would be like, all right, look, we're probably not going to get Patrick Mahomes in here.
So what can you do?
I know that whatever quarterback will get in is going to be good. Because he's, he's worked with some really great ones. I mean, Johnny Manziel, really great college quarterbacks. But anytime he wants to be a head coach in college anymore, that's going to be the thing. So what are you going to do to, part of it is also matching up your offense a little bit to what your defense can do.
Yeah, you got to play complementary football.
And he never did that. All right, well, if we have Patrick, we're going to win most of the time. Actually, no. If you cannot stop anyone, it doesn't matter what he can do. He can throw for 800 yards in a game or whatever it was.
But at a certain point, yeah.
But, if Baker Mayfield throws for 850 and one more touchdown, then you lose. That's how it works. Yeah. So, plus, in that particular game, I've always thought about it. Baker Mayfield came in there on a mission, an absolute mission.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot about the personal aspect of that one. Yeah. But still.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was so bad that I remember when the Chiefs drafted him. I have a really good friend who's a huge Chiefs fan. He's like, I don't know, man. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there are questions about him. I mean, it was kind of well,
I was like, yeah, dude, I've seen this guy, from the air, throw the ball 50 yards, off his feet, throw the ball 50 yards in the air. I think you're going to be all right. None of the Texas Tech problems were on Mahomes.
No, they weren't.
Not a one.
They truly weren't.
Not a one. Hey, you have 8 touchdown passes in you? How about 9? Crap, the other guy's got 10.
Yeah, it's nothing against Patrick.
Yeah, no, it's nothing. So, yeah, and then you also, he also wound up in the perfect situation where he got to sit for a year behind Alex Smith. There was no pressure. And, Andy Reid got to, let everybody forget about everything they said about him in the draft, right?
Yeah.
They're going to forget all about that stuff. Then he starts, it's oh, my gosh, he's unbelievable. Well, yeah, he's got a great coach. He's unbelievably talented. It's the perfect situation. So
Yeah, and Reed never tried to slow him down. He was just like, okay, do your thing.
Yeah.
We're doing this together. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, if there's other coaches that wind up with Patrick Mahomes, it might be one of those things where like, how can this guy not? It might be a Justin Herbert situation where you're like, how do you how do you have the fastest car and keep losing the race? Like, doesn't make any sense at all. Doesn't make any sense. All right, Steven, I won't see you next week. We're doing. Triple Option's going to be a little different. It's going to be more vignettes, interviews, and stuff. The stuff that Smokey doesn't have the patience for, like, I'll give you an example. When Louis Anderson came and sat down in Minneapolis, Smokey didn't want to talk to him.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk to anybody else but Louis Anderson.
Yep.
Like, oh, hey, this guy who plays tight end for the Bucks is here. F that guy. Was he coming to America? No.
I got to talk to Louis Anderson about baskets.
Yeah. I did talk to him about baskets.
I know you did.
Remember?
I love baskets. I think me and you were the only two that watched it, but we like that show.
Yeah. He was genuinely enthused that I asked him about it. He was like, oh, because sometimes you go, like the TV people come in and like they'll know him, but they'll ask him questions about, coming to America or whatever. But then when they're like, oh, hey, I've seen baskets and that's really good and like you're hilarious in it, his face like, oh, thank God, someone who's like seen this show.
Right.
That is not, baskets is not in the realm of the sports fans, like normal, like the sports radio guy. Ironically, the same thing happened to me when, and I couldn't believe it, when the creators of the league, Jeff and Marcy Schaefer, I got to interview them in Phoenix, the same Deion Sanders one, and I was talking to them, and they were like, oh, you've actually seen the show. And I was like, I love the show. Like, I'm like,
people hadn't watched that show? That's crazy.
So like, we've done 10 interviews before you, and none of them have seen the show. And I was like, your show?
Yeah,
like,
that's wild.
Like, I was like, half of your like guest stars are sitting in here right now. They're interviewing them too. Like, yeah, all right. Like, okay, I'm happy that we made friends now. Tell Larry David I said hi, But like that was, you run up against that. Like there's to get Louis Anderson. I even told the guy like, look, I know you're going to want to put him in LA and do all that stuff, but I promise you, there's nobody in this building who'll do a better interview with Louis than I will. I just knew it. I was like, look, how many all the stand-up comedians here stand up. Oh, just me? Thanks.
This is mine.
He's one of my people. We know how to talk to each other. So that's what I did. All right. Well, Steven, I'll let you know how it goes. I hope you're not bitter because we're not making you work.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Paul.
Maybe one day we can make it happen for you.
Maybe. I think that ship has sailed, but that's okay. I've come to peace with it.
I feel bad now.
No, it's fine.
Because believe me, look, Garrett has crossed the Rubicon now.
Finally, yes.
He has.
I mean, I'm kind of in a stage in my life where that's not really something that I can do anymore. Maybe in like 10 years.
Hey, listen, I know that all these kids are small.
Hey, Kristen, it's all right.
It's all right, listen.
You can handle 4 kids for 1 week. It's fine.
You'll be fine. It's just 1 week. I'll be in New Orleans.
Let's pretend it's the 50s again. You're not going to hear from me for a week.
Yeah. I'll call, hello, dear. I trust things are going smashing at the house. All right, pip, pip, goodbye now.
I'll send you a card from Vegas.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us. We've got a ton of stuff. Big 12 Wise coming up on the show, so much I can't even list. And I believe we're going to get former Wyoming head coach Craig Bohl, who's just retired. He is taking over the AFCA. And so we're trying to work on that now. We don't know yet exactly when it's going to be, but Craig Bohl will be a really interesting one because he had a nice run there at Wyoming, the opposite of Miami, and was at Nebraska under Tom Osborne, and was part of their big runs there. So that should be a good one. Should we lock it down? We're trying to figure that out right now. But that's all coming up this afternoon. Thanks to Steven. See you in a week or whatever, everybody. All right. Adios.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown.